Well, I wish everybody at home could hear all the stuff off tape. It's so good. We were talking, people everywhere I go, I think they'd rather hear me do Porter than hear me play and sing, because people love that. Of course, I played with Porter Wagner for a long time, and he would do a segment before the Opry, and he would interview people that he, was asked to interview, and some of them he knew, and some of them he didn't. But he acted like he knew them. Kind of like this man here is wonderful pioneer in gospel music, and he's been a great friend of mine for a long time. And Jim Lowry, it's great to have you on. And Jim, and that's great. And people love you, man. And he had a great group back in the days, back in Alabama, and he had some great people in it. He had Little Brian Free, and Alvin Parsons was in it, and had some great people in it. I believe one of the Blackwood boys was in it too, and but he's wonderful. And then sitting here to my left here is a great lady. And I wish she'd been in my band, as a matter of fact, because she sings really high. There's dogs all over the world when she sings. What is that? She's wonderful, and her name is Carolyn Chick. And you're wonderful, and she's a movie star too. Yeah. You know that? Yeah. Absolutely. She's on television and everything. And right here is a great man too. And Jeff, son, you're powerful. You don't know your own strength. And both of you.
Order.
Me and Jeff, we went into Cracker Barrel just the other day, and we went to a table, sit down, and this couple came in, and the woman recognized me right off, didn't she, Jeff?
Sure did.
Recognized me, and she told her husband, said, "Honey, there's Porter Wagner. I love him. He's my favorite of all of them." Husband looked there and said, "Honey, he's terrible. He's awful. Can't sing, never good." And every nice thing that woman said about me, that husband tried to talk her out of, didn't he?
Sure did.
He was a mean man, awful. And you should have seen what he was having for breakfast. Beef tongue. Folks, beef tongue looks gross early in the morning. Waitress come up to our table, said, "Good morning, what would you like this morning, sir?" I said, "Well, don't give me nothing come out of an animal's mouth. Give me a couple eggs, I guess."
Wendy Bagwell, as you all know, was a really funny man. And he was a superhuman being. But Larry Goss, don't know how many would remember the Goss brothers. Way, way back, they were so far ahead of their time musically. Yes, unbelievable. And Larry, the youngest, was the MC. So he asked Wendy one time, said, "Wendy, give me some kind of a line I can use on stage when I'm introducing my brothers, you know." Wendy said, "Well, just go out and introduce them as my two illiterate brothers." So the next show they did, he comes out and introduced them as his two illegitimate brothers. True story.
Well, this is a true story.
As these others aren't?
Right.
I was
You calling me a liar?
singing in
You want to explain this before you start?
Yeah.
no, I'll just go ahead.
Don't interrupt him too long, he'll forget it.
I was singing Supper Time, and you know the second verse is a recitation. And toward the end of the recitation, it winds up, but one of the greatest memories of let's see, I'll have to get into it better than that. Used to call me from the back steps of the old home place to come home. It's supper time. Mm-hmm. But the greatest of these all supper times will be when the Lord calls together his people together into the toilets of glory instead of portals.
You said that.
I did it. I did it.
played this corporate event at this farm. Well, it was more like a ranch. It was huge. And they had, cattle, and they had horses, and they had everything you can imagine. It was out west, and it was one of those deals where we were supposed to start at a certain time like you guys. We were supposed to start at 8 o'clock. Well, midnight came, and we had still not gone on. And so a little after, they come and get us and say, okay, we're on, we're going. So anyway, we do our set. We're getting almost more than halfway through, and Greenwood does IOU. He won a Grammy for that. It's beautiful song. And all of a sudden, I promise this is the truth. All of a sudden, this old guy comes riding out on a horse. And Lee stops and he looks out there and he said, what in the world just happened? And he's still trying to make sense of it. And he was totally, he could not sing. He was laughing. We were laughing. It was unbelievable. And he got so messed up that later on in the show, he called IOU again and forgot we had done it. And so we came off the stage after we did USA, and somebody said, we did IOU twice. And he comes up to me and he says, we did IOU more than one time? And I said, yes. And he said, why did you let me do that? And I was like, you're the boss.
Hey, what about the time, Kayla, was you with the Rex and them when y'all booked Danville, and it was two different Danvilles, and y'all went to the wrong one? I know Charlotte told us about it.
Because she was going to buy her wedding. She bought her wedding dress that day.
Oh, yeah.
So it was Danville, Virginia versus Danville, Pennsylvania or something like
We've done
that.
that Thomaston. We've done that in Georgia before.
We did that on our way one time. We were headed to Washington, D.C. area. And our drummer, who had been driving that night, they got to the Beltway. He was supposed to go south. He instead went north. When we woke up, we were about 5 hours north on our way heading to New York City. And we barely made the date.
As long as my brother could say, he was in the buddy seat, and I said, where are we, Rabbit? He said, I don't know, but we're making good time.
Well, we've all got stories of when we first got started. And my first memories of singing was my mom and dad. And we started out in an old Chrysler. Daddy had a big Chrysler. It had a trunk big enough for a swimming pool in it. And then we went up to a Dodge van, and Dad had a local group, and they were called the Cumberland Valley Singers. And I would ride on the hump. And then all the family, my brothers, we started singing together, and Dad just had a vision, and we went and bought a bus. And our first bus was just like this bus.
I think everybody's rode one of these before. It's one of the
And
first
I'll
ones.
never forget it. We found it in Memphis, Tennessee, somewhere around Germantown. And we rode down there to get it in an ice storm. And all the way down there, that thing was just going to cry. I mean, we were just all over the place. But when we got this bus, these buses really go good in
they're
snow.
great, yeah.
And they will fly on the open road. But a lot of our singing was done in the mountains of East Tennessee. Our first trip out, we went over, and I can tell you exactly where it was, Freddie Copeland's church, Copeland's Chapel, up around Sparta, Tennessee. And to get over to Copeland's Chapel, you have to go over a big mountain. Well, we got there fine, but the getting back was steeper than the getting there. So we head back, and Dad said, okay. He stopped the bus, and he said, now we're going to have to really get up ahead of steam to get up this mountain. So, man, he revved up the engine on the 4104, and here we went, man. That thing, wow! I mean, it was bawling, man, like a calf in a hailstorm. And, man, here we went. Wow! I mean, I can just imagine. Paul, what was that, man? Family of gospel singers, here we went. Man, we was making it up. We just almost made it to the top, and there was a hair, I mean, one of those where the back end meets you. And, man, just, I mean, wouldn't do it. Here we all got out with flashlights. We back down. We tried again. Well, at that time we had a.
It just wouldn't.
It would not make
go.
it. Would not make it over the hill, and it has something to do with torque and ratio and all that stuff. And so we had a sound man. He weighed 300 pounds if he weighed an ounce. He may have weighed 400. We were like, all right, Henry, get off the bus. so we made the big sound man get off the bus first. Still wouldn't make it. So then we said, all the guys get off. So all the guys get off the bus, and when it gets to this certain part, we're all going to get behind the bus and push. I mean, just like the pictures, you know, and we've got here with the singing news. So as soon as the bus starts struggling a little bit, we're all back there. We act like, you know, like that's really going to help. So it wouldn't make it. So we made all the girls get off and we unloaded the PA equipment.
Oh man.
Still wouldn't make it. So we're sitting there pondering what we should do when all of a sudden we hear the glorious sound of some farmer who was transferring some hay from one field to another on a trusty John Deere. And Dad talked to the guy and he showed us mercy. He even went to the house and got his son and got a pickup truck. We put all our sound equipment in the pickup truck. He hooked a log chain to the 4104 and we kept on going down the road.
The mountain.
The Wilburns, the mountain bus trip, buddy. That was our first one. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this is how the buses are going to be for us.
What have we done?
What have we done? But the 4104 was an incredible bus. I mean, there was a time we were in a terrible snowstorm out in Spartanburg, South Carolina with Jerry Goff. And the reason I remember that, Jerry Goff had a Mercedes, and he made me and my drummer ride in the trunk of the thing to keep it giving it traction, and to go work out that day. But then when we went to the studio to record, he wanted to go on the 4104. He knew about 4104s. We didn't. Jerry Goff has been around since the crossbow was a secret weapon. And man, we were going through the middle of Spartanburg in a 4104. I promise you, there were military vehicles. There were four-wheel drives that were stuck. But the GM 4104, buddy, wow, it just, I'm telling you right now, it's like a tank. I mean, it is like, and that's what we called it, the tank. And for good reason. One evening, our neighbors called and said, y'all's bus is down in the pasture. and the air had bled off the 4104. And y'all, I thought we were going to get down there. And I thought the doggone thing was going to be beat all to pieces. It looked like a bulldozer had made a new drive through the ditch. I mean, it cut it just like you had cut it with a bulldozer for an entrance to a drive. And had bounced down in there and come to a stop in that pasture. Well, I said, Dad, what are we going to do? You want me to call a wrecker? He went, no, go get my sledgehammer. So I went and got the sledgehammer. Dad got the door open. He beat the step down. Gets in the bus, cranks it up, and backs it. I mean, backed that thing plumb out of that pasture, through the ditch, back up in the driveway. So these buses bring back a lot of memories and a lot of tight situations. One time we had 12 or 13 people that'd be traveling on a 4104. So it brings back some sweet memories for me, big time.
Hey, let me tell a Wendy Bagwell story real fast. I don't think most of you probably have heard this one because I was talking to his daughter, Rita, whose middle name is Gima. And that's important because Wendy was a Marine during World War II and fought on Iwo Jima. That's where he came up with her middle name. She told me a story about one night, truck stop, breakfast, all of y'all know the routine. And she said Wendy always changed clothes before he came to the restaurant to eat. But this time he did not, and you knew Wendy liked to dress up. He liked to dress up. Tuxedo, black patent leather shoes, frilly shirts, and a pompadour hairdo. So he walked into this restaurant as the other group they were singing with was back in the back, and they were relating the story to Rita. Said he walked past these four tough truck driving looking fellas, and one of them whistled at him. And she said he stopped in his tracks and he just backed up about 4 steps. Now I must tell you that Wendy, you hit him on the arm or somewhere like that, is like hitting a brick wall. He was a Marine, he was tough, he had a furniture store in Smyrna, Georgia. He was a hands-on. He was loading this furniture every day and unloading it every day. And he was muscular and tough. And these guys whistled at him. And he just stopped and he came back, reached in his pocket and took out a wad of money. He always carried a wad of money, a bunch of $100 bills. And he peeled one of them off and he laid it down in the middle of the table. And he said, that $100 is for the fellow that whistled at me, if he's man enough to admit it. Pick it up. He just said, all guys' heads went down, looking down, and Wendy looked them all in the eye, just one by one. And she said the place got quiet as he looked at all 4 of them. And finally, after the longest moment, Wendy picked up his $100 and said, I didn't think so.
You know, like when you travel a lot, most time at nighttime, you got a bus driver or somebody's driving the bus, and then you try to get as much rest as you can. Well, Larry, I feel like I'm picking on Larry today, but it's such a, funny story about him because he's bad to go to, he wants to go to bed. When he's on the bus, he's either reading his Bible, looking out the window in the front, driving, or in the bed, but most time in the bed. Norman and everybody can vouch for that. But when we went to this church on a Sunday 2:00 thing, and we pulled up there. And I believe I drove in and I pulled the bus in, and when I did, there was a fence to the left side of the bus. Well, the church was right in front of the bus, and it wasn't a big church. It was, rather a small church, and people started coming in and everything. But to the left, like I said, there was a fence that run down the side of the bus, and just past that fence, there was a 40-acre field, and that 40-acre field was a junkyard. Well, Larry come out of the back of the bus, and he's wiping his eyes and this, that, and the other, and he reached over and he got him a cup of coffee, and he kind of squinted his eyes, and he looked out the windshield, and he seen that little small church, and he said, oh, like that. And about that time, he looked over to the left side of the bus, out that window over here, and when he did, he seen that 40-acre field full of cars. He looked over and he said, my stars, what a crowd. He said, where are we going to put them? I said, that's a junkyard, brother.
It's funny how the families that we have, gospel music is our family. Rex, my son, Scoot, everybody knows him now in gospel music. But I knew he was going to be a gospel singer, I think, when one day we were sitting, and you know how your kids, a lot of times they're babies, and then all of a sudden one day, they're a human you're talking and having a conversation with.
Adult conversation.
Yeah, I remember that day, but I remember every time we'd be around, and if my boy was with me and Rex was there, they always had the shootout battle. Rex would look at him and like that, and my son would be shooting back, and that would go on for several minutes there, and I remember one time, that happened 2 or 3 times, but one time my son and I were riding in my truck in Pensacola, just around town doing errands. And I was listening to Whit on the radio. Whit started playing one of the Nealon songs, and it featured Rex, and my little boy, he couldn't have been over 2 to 3 years old, something like that, just barely, talking good and everything. Didn't even say nothing. Listened to the radio, and I was watching him, and Rex came on and started singing a song, and my boy looked at the radio and went, no.
Willie, when I was about 12 years old, my brother-in-law introduced me to gospel music, and he bought him a stack of albums, about a foot tall. I had the Blackwood Brothers and Statesman and Oak Ridge Boys, Oak Ridge Quartet at that time.
Yeah.
And I listened to all of them. But there was one guy on there that really influenced me and had a different sound that I wanted to pattern after. And that was Willie Wynn, my hero.
What an honor that you'd say that, son. I appreciate it.
I listened to every album. In fact, another brother-in-law of mine and I, every time we had a lawn care business, every time I got enough money to go out and buy an album, it'd be Little Willie.
Bless you.
In the Oak Ridge Quartet. I'll never forget what you said to me when we were in Oak Hill, West Virginia. I was singing with the Crossmen, and of course you had the Tennesseans. And after we sang that night, you came out right before I got in the bus, and he said, "Young man, you be patient. You hang in there. You keep singing like you're singing. And one day you're going to be with a professional group." And I'll never forget that. And what an encouragement, what an influence. Not only you've been to my life, but to countless others in gospel music and to people that listen to you. In fact, you made such a big impression that when I auditioned for the Kingsmen, Hamill said, "Phillips, would you quit singing like Little Willie and sing like Ernie Phillips?" I just wanted to know I love you, wanted you to know I love you, and wanted to know that you have influenced and will continue to influence millions out there in gospel music.
Thank you.
God bless you.
What a compliment. Bless
Amen.
you too, sir. And I'm a fan of yours.
Yeah, get out of here.
I'm being very honest with you, sir. You were so clear and distinct. I tried, but I was never clear and I was never distinct.
Forgive him, Lord.
But I had, I had a good time. But man, you're fantastic and always happy.
Bless you.
And thank you for those compliments.
Keep singing.
I will. Thank you.
You know, a lot of times when we're traveling down the road, it's you know, you have to switch out drivers, and this is one thing I'm sure every gospel group, I guess Jonathan has done.
Very illegal.
In country groups and everything. Very illegal, but you have to be really careful, and it's a task, isn't it?
Yes.
But most of the time, you're not supposed to do this, but one will slip up under the wheel,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the other one will slip out, and we're going to show you how it's done right here.
Well, there's a technique to it. First of all, you have to keep a little acceleration with your left foot and keep the wheel under control as the other driver becomes part of the whole scenario. As you will see, Jeff
You
will
stay-
come right here, and then I'm still got my foot on the gas.
Then you
Jeff
slip
slips into the place.
slide under, and then you put your foot and slide
Boom.
right there.
It's
And
amazing.
you stay in the middle of the road by the grace of the good Lord.
Amen. So y'all
How
pray
many
for
times
us.
He's watched after us.
I'll tell you one thing. The very, very person, and you've heard this a million times, I know, that I think was as close to a perfect fella I ever met was your daddy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Dad Spear. Never heard a bad thing about the man, never heard him say anything out of the way.
Willie called him one day, said, "Dad, I'm the world's greatest tenor." And Daddy said, "Oh, you finally learned how to sing?"
You know, one of the things I remember too, I guess it was back then, the Blackwood brothers, J.D. Sumner, was singing bass at the old Ryman Auditorium. And the boy, they had just torn the crowd up. Crowd was loving it and really eating it up. And Dad, and you were getting ready to go on next. You guys were. Dad Spear was standing there, and I never will forget. He walked off stage, and Dad looked at J.D. and he said, "I long for the day when I can call you Reverend."
I didn't know about that.
He said, "I long for the day when I can call you Reverend Sumner."
Talking about the prophets, way back, they were tougher than nails, buddy. They hit that stage, and they were the first group that I recall that had one of these really, really high tenor singers, Big Lou. I mean, he was rather
Big.
healthy, but he started. His tone started somewhere like a high C and went up. The first that I remember of these, was high, and boy, a lead singer had to be a tenor singer to sing under Big Lou, and it was just really, really high stuff. So, actually.
Even that was off pitch, wasn't it?
Even that was off.
Man, that's kind of neat. Where'd you get that? Anyway, you go ahead and tell it.
I don't know what
Anyway,
you're going to tell.
they go out on the stage. They would sing so high, especially Big Lou, that nothing but dogs could hear them.
Right.
So a lot of their crowds, they had more dogs in it than they did people.
And that's the reason you could hear, right?
I'll be
Hey,
glad
let
when
me
this is
let
over.
me tell you one.
I don't have to make a living doing this.
No, you could starve to
I
death.
could
if you-
starve to death.
Well, one of the funniest things that ever happened to us. If you ever want to go on vacation and have a good time, invite Karen Peck and her husband Ricky Peck. They are so much fun. We got a deal on some airplane tickets. A girl that used to work for us went to work for an airline, so we got a really good deal. We called Karen Peck and Ricky Peck to go with us to the over to Hawaii, and all the way on the plane, Karen kept saying, Don Ho, y'all remember watching the Don Ho show? Oh, we might get to meet Don Ho. And so all the way, that's all I heard was Don Ho. First thing I done when I got there, me and Ricky going through the Yellow Pages, we found Don Ho. We went to the same, that's where we were staying in the same town. We booked a reservation. Sure enough, Don Ho was out signing autographs before the show starts. So we're walking through the line, and for whatever look we have as gospel singers, I don't know what it is, but Don looked at us and said, well, y'all look like entertainers. Karen jumped right in. We're gospel singers from Georgia. And he says, well, I love gospel music. Maybe we can sing a song after a while. You know, just we pass it off. We never dreamed he would ask us to sing with him. So we go in there, and at the time, Morgan is 18 now. She was about 3. And so she had to go to the bathroom. So I thought, well, I'm going to take Morgan to the bathroom. I took her to the bathroom, and when I came back in the theater, there stood Karen and Sherry on stage with Don Ho. Wow. And Karen's up there, the show's going on, Karen's going, Jim, come on, Jim. And so, now this is happening now. And so I dropped Morgan off over there by Ricky Peck, and we go up there, and we go up, get on stage, and we sing Amazing Grace.
Yes.
And we did a 3-part harmony, me and Sherry and Karen. And Don was just loving it. He loved it. And so he said, now you sung it for me. Now I would like to, and it was a very tender moment. He said, in Hawaiian, I would like to sing Amazing Grace for our friends from Georgia. And he started in Hawaiian. I can't do it, so I ain't going to try. But right in the middle of his tender moment, Karen looks at me and says, I can't believe I'm on stage with Don Ho. Is that a true story, Karen?
It's a true story.
And now you being a movie star, you know how people feel.
Oh, look at you.
And what about Kevin? What'd he do to you? I mean, he's played some bad jokes on you, Gordon.
Oh, well, don't worry. I get him back, but nobody ever sees it. But I remember one night we had, I don't know, it was a former Miss America or somebody that Bill brought up, and hey, you're going to love this kid. And, you know, so big introduction, and brings her up, and she sings God Bless America. Well, Kevin gets in my ear monitors and says, we're all standing, Gordon. And so I stand, put my hand over my heart. And I find out later that nobody stood. And so don't worry, though. I did get him back. Yeah, they always getting me.
And the funny one, too, it ain't funny, but it happened, was in Maine eating lobster.
Oh,
one
it's
time.
funny.
And we got all of us went in a carrier van to eat, and we all got in the van and looked, and there was no Gordon. And Bill was like, Bill.
Hey, well, we were coming back. I know you were. I know. I'm not worried. You know, you get to old friends and look over, and there's no old friend at the piano. I figured you'd come back. So.
When I started with the Prophets years ago over in East Tennessee, we sang with a group that had a blind guitar player, and his name was Cleo. And it was a family group. And they went in the studio to record, and they were recording, and he was playing, and the guy that run the group, whoever was producing, say they were doing a song which said wing. And the producer stopped him and he said, somebody out there is saying wang instead of wing. And the guy running thinks, says, it's Cleo, and he says, say Wayne, Cleo.
That's it.
It was him.
Yeah.
On Angel's Way.
That's kind of like the guy saying with his group, you know, you're flat on Chull. What do you mean I'm flat on Chull? Well, every time you say Chris Chull C, you're flat on
Now, let me explain Light Man to some of these folks who are not going to understand what that is. During that time, we had a piano player named Powell Hassel.
Yes, sir.
You remember Powell?
I do.
And back then I didn't have all this, and I had
weren't
hair and and a pretty skinny little fellow, as a matter of fact. And Powell Hassel said, you know, he said, you're just a light man. He said, you're not out of proportion or nothing, but you don't weigh much. You're just a light man. And that name has stuck with me till this day. Willie ain't never called me anything but light. Light for short.
Well, it went from there to breath and britches.
Now, I got one more quick story. Talking about Powell Hassel, who played the piano for us. He had perfect pitch, absolutely perfect pitch. And he could not sing off key. He sang at 440. And occasionally when somebody was missing, as will happen, the piano player has to sing the part that's missing because of illness or whatever. And we'd go to these little school auditoriums where they had these old upright pianos that were 2 keys flat or 2 keys sharp or something. And when Powell would sing with us, he sang right at 440, pitch 440, and the rest of us would be singing with the piano. It was the awfulest sound, the most pathetic. He could not sing off pitch.
I had him.
Now that we don't have that problem.
No, sir, never had.
What did you start?
I never made a pitch I couldn't shade.
And then one more quick one. When Ed O'Neill and Rex took my daddy and them through, when we went to Maine, we had to go through New York. And this is a true story. We woke up early in the morning, and Ed O'Neill's drinking his coffee, riding the Easter Brothers bus, and looked, said, downtown Brooklyn, and looked over there and said, see them cars on them blocks? Said, them cars, they had tires on them when them folks went to bed. People, that's how they do up here. They steal them tires right off your cars. My Uncle Ed said, well, that ought to be against the law.
Tell them about that time that we had to sing for that funeral. I'll kind of set it up a little bit. The Harper Agency called us, and somebody had called them just picked a random group from Atlanta to come and sing at a funeral. And it just happened to be us, but none of our members were in town. So I called Karen and Stan Whitmire and Jason, and we went to this funeral in downtown Atlanta.
And didn't they cremate him, maybe? And I think
they sat him there.
They sat him there, and
I mean, it was just a jar.
But when Kelly called me, she said, we don't know if anything was in it or not. But
they had his picture.
Yeah.
They had his picture. And had his ashes.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that.
Well, and Kelly had told me, she says, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'd love for you to come if you don't mind and sing the third part, but they've got a lot of songs for us to sing, but he loved the sound of music. She said, so we have to sing the sound of music. And I said, Kelly, I can't. I don't think I can do it. I mean, I will laugh, because the way I am with my emotions.
It wasn't about the funeral.
No,
it was just
because of course, but when there's so much pressure and you're not supposed to laugh and it's just so intense, I have a tendency to laugh.
Really?
When I get the many times that Rex Nealon almost fired me for laughing.
And I had to be the straight person.
Yes, you were. Yes, and I knew if you ever lost it, then it's funny. And that's why you were always good about holding it together, because as long as you didn't laugh, then I could, halfway hold it together. But if you ever laughed, I was gone. But then we got to the funeral, and then we had to sing "The Hills Are Alive," and we are shaking the bench. It was,
and there was one song we didn't know very well, and they left me up there.
The
Karen is
Edelweiss.
hysterical. Edelweiss. I'm singing Edelweiss. Well, I look over. Karen she's lost it. I mean,
hysterical.
And I can pretty much handle that because I'm so used to her laughing. But I looked over Stan Whitmire. All I saw were hands. He had gone under the piano. He was laughing so hard. All I could see were hands playing. And I mean, we did that one. We did.
I saw a blind man tapping along.
Yeah. And the man in the aisle started tapping his cane, and it was just like things just kept happening. I mean, it was just like, and they were hysterical. Karen and Jason, they left me hanging.
Yeah,
and so finally, I could not take it anymore, and I broke. I mean, I did all I could do, and I went. I tried to act like I was overcome with grief.
Well, but honestly, we couldn't fake this laugh. I mean, it was obvious. But when she broke, that was it for me.
I was so embarrassed.
It was, and I hated myself. I was, you hate.
But it happened. You want to keep your composure, and that makes it even worse.
It
when you try
does.
and it happened at my mama's funeral. Now my brother Rabbit. Now my mama. If anybody knew, quick story. Mama. Ivan Parker's brother Danny came into Daddy's music store one day and said, "Hello, do you know who this is?" She says, "No." Said, "This is Ivan Parker's brother." And she said, "Well, hooty cootie for him." And that's just the way Mama was, So at Mama's funeral, I told Daddy said, "Jeff, would you take care of it?" I said, "Well, Daddy, we're just going to laugh and tell stories because when we get through hard times, we're just going to laugh and tell stories." We got through the funeral, and I told about how the first date my Uncle Ed was with my mama, and they ended up. My Uncle Ed I told old Ed a while ago, he said, "You just take whichever one you want, I'll take the other." And that's how Daddy ended up with Mama. And so we was telling funny stories like that, but then the funeral was over. Mama was there and they was ready to roll right. My brother Rabbit is the biggest Star Trek fan in the world. Rabbit sat beside of me, his wife's beside, and then Molly's over there beside, and Madison, my boy, and his wife Shannon's behind us. So me and Sherry's there. They start rolling Mama down the aisle. And all at once, we didn't know the funeral home, they did it at the funeral home, started playing Amazing Grace on bagpipes. And if you've ever watched Star Trek, when Spock died, they sent him out to space playing bagpipes. So here goes Mama rolling down the thing, and Rabbit's about to, y'all put your hand on your heart, it's Star Trek. And so we all start laughing. Rabbit's over here, Rabbit's like, and Molly's like you were. Molly went, like that. And Shannon's behind us, and she thinks we done lost it because they rolling Mama out. She thinks we're crying. So Shannon starts crying back there, thinking we're. But it happens.
It happens. You can't help it.
The family, after we got through with that funeral, the family said, "I just didn't know it touched y'all."
Oh, yeah.
I said, "We're just like that."
Yeah.
You want a bus story?
I do.
You don't count. You part of it. I hold two distinctions. I hold a record for spending more time under a bus than I did in it. And I hold a record for coming closer to a pitch without ever getting on it. Did anybody ever did?
Amen.
Watch it.
He's talking about funny things on the bus. But back in the early 70s, about 71, I guess, or in that area, 72. It was before Ernie came at us. Me and Johnny Perrick, who was singing tenor voice at that time, decided we need a little humor in gospel music. Everybody seemed to be, walking around like, stiff-necked and not stiff-necked, but you know what I'm saying. Serious. Nobody having any fun. So we were singing down in eastern North Carolina, and with the Hoppers, and with Hoppers and Connie at that time, and we decided, and they just got a new bus, and we decided, well, we're going to put some humor back. So when they come up on stage, me and Johnny went out, and of course we knew about the buses in the first place. We shut the power off of it. No power whatsoever, no power. But we knew the first thing they'd do would go to the power supply and turn switches. So we didn't do it there. We just unhooked the battery.
Yeah.
And left them in a position where it looked like they were hooked. And we said, that's going to be funny. They'll come out here and won't have any power. Well, at the end of their concert, or right before the end of their concert, they had this bass player, played bass, and he come up to sing a song. They brought him up to sing a song. His name was Barry. I can't remember his last name. But anyway, he was singing that song, and he went up for a high ending on the end of it, and as he did, it just trailed off like, and he went over, straight over, just like a statue, head first, into the orchestra pit.
Wow.
He's using one of those old AKG mics that didn't have a windscreen on it, and it caught him right here. And the bad thing, here's what the thing was. He was a diabetic, and he had his sugar attack. Well, the first thing they did was they run to the bus to get his medicine. Oh, no. There's no power, there's no lights, they don't know nothing. I mean, they can't find it, they can't do anything. So we rushed out there real quick and put the cables back on. Or I had Johnny do that, you know. Okay, and but that was our last time to try to put humor back in comedy.
Play a practical joke. Yeah.
Oh, that was a horrible one. I mean, horrible to try to be funny, you know.
As everybody was sitting here talking about funny story, this didn't happen with the new group. I had just been with the Cathedrals maybe a year, and we sang someplace up north in Maryland. And George and Glenn loved cowboy boots and always wore cowboy boots. I had never owned a pair in my life. Nothing about me cowboy, you know. And we went to this church, and it was Cowboy Sunday.
Sure.
And the pastor insisted that we dress in cowboy garb, just whatever we could. I mean, I owned nothing cowboy. And so the only thing that I could do was George loaned me a pair of his boots. And I'd never had a pair of cowboy boots on in my life. And I felt like everybody was noticing my boot. You know, I felt goofy about it. Nobody else knew, but I felt like everybody's staring at my feet. I'm so uncomfortable. This is not me. And I'm just wanting the day to end. And George ends with Champion of Love. And so they start the track, and Roger Bennett's standing next to me. And he knows I have been so uncomfortable all day, so self-conscious. And he says to me, "Step on out there and sing us a spell, little doggy." And I laughed. I mean, it was the most horrible thing because I laughed and I never could sing. I was talking, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" I couldn't sing, man. It was hilarious. Oh, man, had to talk it. So those are the funny things that happen, you know, just every decade. They probably happen for you every night because you laugh all the time. But, man, that was just hilarious.
Karen, you need to tell about the time you got left.
Well, I had, you know, we were, Susan and I, wait, this was before, okay. I was expecting my son Matthew, and there were 3 of us, and 2 of my band members that their wives were expecting babies also. So Jeff Talbert was actually filling in for Danny Crawford, who was also the piano player and the singer. And his wife was expecting a baby and about to have the baby. So he filled in, and then we had Chuck Lawrence on the piano. Well, and I guess I was about 8 months pregnant. And so we were outside and at a concert in Illinois. And so I was standing at the end of the concert outside under the pavilion talking to the promoter. And all of a sudden I see the bus going by, and I'm going, they've just left me. Oh, and all I could think of is my husband's driving that bus. And so anyway, so then you tell what.
It was funny because it was a wild night anyway, because we was all trying to learn your material, and we were trying to do a good job on stage. So the first thing, Chuck gets up, and he's got like a book full of charts, and he sits down at the piano player, and you just got to know him. He's kind of a nervous guy, and when he does, he opens up his book and the charts just go flying all over the stage. So here we are with our guitars, strapped around us trying to pick up charts. And so we finally make it through the program and, try to do our best to get through that night. And then we were on the bus, going down the road. And I just kind of looked over at Ricky and I said, where's Karen at? And he just kind of looked at me and he said, well, she's probably back there. I said, no, I ain't seen no Karen. I said, I don't think she's on here. And he said, you got to be kidding me. He said, I'm dead. So we turned around and went back and got Karen. I said, you better go get the boss.
That's right, because I was great with Charles.
And real quick, Ricky, talking about your husband Ricky, he's the funniest, most country guy
Yes,
in the world.
he is.
When your bus caught on fire, tell him that story.
Well, Ricky is the most laid back,
Yes.
Jeff can tell you, most laid back person you'll ever meet. And
Sweet
he's very slow to wrath. He does not get mad. He does not fly off the handle and get angry. And so when we first started New River, of course, Tim was one of them, and Rex and Eldridge and all these guys would say, whatever you do, do not buy a bus. And of course, what do? We go out and get a bus. So we had this Silver Eagle. And that bus gave us so much grief. And keep in mind, we're just a bunch of kids. We know nothing about buses. And so, our motto is, of course, if you hear something from the bus, just, eventually it'll go away. Just keep and so, if this gives you any indication, we had that bus for 3 years, and every year we put an engine in that bus. But needless to say, everything else. Well, about 2 years into that same bus, our band was in Nashville, and we were headed through Nashville to pick up the band. My dad had just passed away, and all that was on the bus was Susan, my sister Susan, and then my brand new baby was 6 months old, and my mama. And Ricky was driving the bus, and we're on Interstate 75. Now, keep in mind, Ricky spends every waking hour trying to figure out how to keep that bus going. And it was just, he was turning gray-headed because of that bus. So we were driving up Interstate 75, and all of a sudden, smoke just starts pouring inside the bus. And we're saying, oh no, Ricky, the bus is on fire. And he says, oh dear Lord. And he pulls the bus over to the side, and he said, okay. He said, girls, okay, just grab your purses and everything, that you can think of that would be valuable to you. And then let's get off the bus, and then we've got to start getting all this equipment out from under the bus. And so we started pulling everything off the bus, and everything we owned was on the side of 75, and we were just and Susan and I, by this time, we were just distraught, and I was going, oh, Lord Jesus, I just don't understand what's happening, and I could hear Ricky under the bay. He said, let her burn, Lord, burn it to the ground. And so we were crying, and he was screaming to God, please let it burn to the ground. And the Lord did not answer his prayers because there was a volunteer fireman right behind us. So come to find out, it was in the electrical system, and they were able to fix the bus after all. And we did finally eventually sell that same bus, but by the time they got it, they had all brand new parts.
Yeah, they did.
I have a light moment to say something that I remember from J.D. Sumner's funeral, and if any of you guys were there, you've heard this story. Mark Lowry wanted to ride to Atlanta, I guess it was, with J.D. just in his car, and they stopped at some place like Golden Corral to have lunch, and the lady that waited on us was up in her years, and said that J.D. wanted to know who she was and how many did she have in her family or whatever. Just light talk like that, Found out that she had been operated on for cancer and was not doing well at all. And when they left, J.D. reached into his pocket, and Mark said, a roll of bills is big enough to choke a dog, and just laid it on the table. They walked out. When they got in the car, Mark asked J.D., said, how much money was that? J.D. said, why does it matter?
Oh, good story. Good story.
Wow.
Wow.
Let me tell you something that's not necessarily funny,
But in every group that really has made their mark in Christian music, of course we know Kenny and Chris would say Chris with the Hensons, but you would hear like the Florida Boys. It'd be out of all the good talent that was in the Florida Boys, it was that unique sound of Les Beasley's voice that earmarked the Florida Boys. Right here, with all the great talent that was in the Spear family, right here is that voice in the Spear family that made that unique sound that makes a group a hit. When you crack that radio and instantly you go, that's the Spear family, because I hear that one voice amid all the others. That was the voice that made the Spear family. To me, and I think to thousands of other people, although, I mean, there was nobody like Brock and Faye and all of them, but Ben made that unique, distinct sound. Willie had a lot to do with that Oak Ridge Boys sound. I know William Golden, but
would you please stop? You're making me cry.
But Brock didn't care a whole lot for Ben, but he loved his bus.
Excuse me.
Brock loved his bus. He didn't like Ben,
And you had a lot of charisma, that's for sure. But and in personality, and let's face it, a lot of times it is personality that helps groups to be able to sell themselves to the public.
Absolutely.
And without that, you can sing good and look good, but if you don't connect with those people that are listening to you, and he's one of the greatest. Yep. He's one of the greatest that can do that.
All my life, I want to hear one of them miss a pitch.
That's true. You're right.
Of course, I might not have known it if I had.
Well, according to my father, you wouldn't have.
Okay.
I've said this over and over and over. How many times Daddy has told Willie, I've heard so much off-pitch singing, I'm beginning to like it.
Tell me about the current Oak Ridge Boys. Dwayne Allen sings lead, and we called him Bill Golden. But it's William Lee.
William Lee.
Now, and you sang with them for a good long while after I left.
Yeah, over a week.
Did you?
Yeah, when they both came with the group, William Lee, aka Bill, he was knock-kneed, and Dwayne was bow-legged. Two of my best friends in the world, still are, love them to death. But back then, you stand them side by side and they spelled ox. Now, since they have enveloped themselves in a great amount of success down through the years, those legs have straightened up. So now you stand them together and they spell 11-11. Right after Dwayne, when he came with us, he was a ball of fire. And he probably still is. I don't know. I don't see fire that much anymore. But he was a promoter. Very sharp, very astute. And we'd go into a town, and he would hit the streets with our latest little 45, don't you see? Little vinyl pressing. And he'd go to all these radio stations promoting our latest record. Well, this particular time, we were somewhere in Alabama, whatever, and the rest of us saw this little radio station, and right before we got to the hotel. So we told Dwayne about it, said, this is an all-gospel station, and while you're doing your rounds today, you might ought to drop them off record, So we get ready to head out to the auditorium. On the way down there, we stopped and let him out, parked on the side of the road there beside a little station. He goes in, and it was a hard rock station. They couldn't even spell gospel music. And he come back, he never batted an eye. That was him. He used to have the legs. He don't now. Right now, he's half of the 11-11 team.
We were singing, it was me and Mom and Dad and Tony Gore. And we were singing in North Carolina. And it was a really good singing. A radio station had put it on, and we had just really started getting some airplay, and the service was just great. And Dad, he asked if anybody had a prayer request. But he asked it in a way, he said, does anybody have any requests? Well, those people being radio listeners thought he was asking if they had a request for us to sing a song. And at that time, we had a hit song out. And this guy over here to the right, he goes, I do. He said, I want to hear Coming Out of the Wilderness. And Daddy went, I hear that. Yes, amen. Well, about that time, there was another person, yeah, we want to hear Coming Out of the Wilderness. Daddy went, yeah, I got you. I hear that. Well, man, Mom and Dad aren't hearing this the same way I'm hearing it. I'm hearing the request for the song. Well, man, Dad is fixing to get down in the altar and really start calling on the Lord. I'm talking, I see him say, I can see that serious look come across, and man, he's fixing to get down there and, Lord, I want to ask you, and he's fixing to really just pray for somebody. Well, about that time, I went, let's sing it, Tony. Boom, we sang it, man. I got through about the second verse, and my mom was over there. She was doing the mad singing. She was mad. She was, she had that. So finally, we get finished, and Mama's got me by the back of the arm, and she went, that's the most disrespectful thing. And I'm like, yeah, we've got CDs and tapes, and I'm telling about our product out front. And so me and Tony go out there to work the table, and Mom and Dad aren't out there, and that was unusual. And I said, why is Mom and Dad mad? So mad? And Tony said, I have no idea. And Mom and Dad are sitting there, Bible's out, we're fixing to get it, man, And we went, guys, Mom, what's wrong? She went, that's the most, in all of my life, that's the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen on a stage, Jonathan Allen. When Mama got mad, it was Jonathan Allen Wilburn. She'd grit them teeth, And I went, what are you talking? I don't understand what you're talking about. And Daddy just sitting over there solemn looking. She went, your father was about to have prayer for that dear man, Comer Wilkerson. And I said, do what? She went, yes. There is some man that 3 people in that audience requested. And she started 3 people. Oh, yeah. Started have prayer for that man, Comer Wilkerson. There's no telling what was wrong with him. And I said, Mom, they weren't requesting prayer for Comer Wilkerson. They were requesting the song, Coming Out of the Wilderness. And she went, oh, Lord, honey, you saved us, But, that was one of the few times it was unmerited that I was getting in trouble.
Oh, yes.
But, because there's many times that I deserve to get in trouble.
Oh, he sang Midnight Cry one night. He come back to the bus. He got tickled.
During Midnight Cry.
I don't know what he got tickled at.
No, sure you don't know. You know exactly why I got tickled.
He come to the bus. I said, Jonathan, there's a time to laugh.
Yeah.
Of all people, there's a time to be serious. What the hell? I said, get up there on the most serious song that we sang. The Lord's fixed to come back. And we're singing this song. And then I got tickled because he thought I was serious, But he gets up there and I got tickled.
Oh my goodness! Do you remember up north when that crazy guy? There was this guy out in the audience, and when a group really has a really good stand, you want to go out there and kind of quieten things and sing an easy song. Well, we had this Squire Parsons songs, and they said make welcome. It was in an old Walmart that had been converted into a church, and a good crowd there, and only in Southern gospel music.
Yeah.
So we were walking out on stage. And all of a sudden, I wish I could stand up, but I'm kind of tied up here. But this guy jumps out in the aisle, and he has on ski mittens. and a Cousin Eddie hat.
Oh.
This is a true
Yeah.
story with my hand up. And he jumps out in the middle of the aisle right before we're fixing to sing our first note. He starts screaming the loudest voice of it over our PA, over everything. He starts going, "Go City, go City, go City, go City, go City, go City!" I mean, it was like a broke record. And we're all up there trying to sing.
I was up there going,
I mean, out of all the people I've ever seen, I mean, this guy got the Gold City Award. But
it was hilarious.
You know, I remember you talking about Gospel Singing
Yes.
Jubilee and how you tried out for the Spears. They said you couldn't,
I couldn't read music, right?
And then
Super nice to me, but
yeah, and that's what they were looking for. You know, they needed somebody who could read music. It wasn't that you didn't, they didn't recognize any talent at all. It's just specifically you didn't read music. And so then a few weeks later, you were turned down by the Gospel Singing Jubilee, the
producers.
Like showbiz and people like that. And I think Les had to be the one to tell you.
Yeah, Les Beasley had to tell me that I had no
And
charisma, right?
And then he introduced the Hensons to the Gospel Singing Jubilee, and just a few weeks later, here you came and you joined the Hensons, and you were regulars, and now you were
introducing the Spears. Those are good times. And I was young, and you were younger.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how young we were.
I was just 17.
17 years
That's
old.
that's unbelievable.
Wow, dressed all the way down. Of course, all the women wore.
And I put makeup on, and you couldn't tell that I had makeup on.
Yeah, and we were afraid your daddy, who was strict, was gonna not like that.
They just
at all.
wanted
You
me to be
gone the world.
homely.
You
They wanted
gone
me
the
to be
world.
homely.
But we every time we'd go out on the week and do our singing 4 days a week, we'd come back in. It'd be time to film the Gospel Singing Jubilee. Everybody, all the cast would meet at Channel 8 down on Murfreesboro Road, and you had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they put that powder all over you. You're drinking coffee and you don't even like coffee.
I just thought of this too, and this was so neat because they actually would let people come in, live audience, and people would gather around that old piano that was there on the set and take pictures around that piano because they were so. This is the Gospel Singing Jubilee piano. This is the back, set of the Gospel Singing Jubilee, and
You know what I used to like to do? I used to like to when I'd watch the playbacks, like be in a motel someplace, and I'd like to try to when they do a shot of that
you
piano.
just like to watch yourself.
When they do a shot of that piano, it has a mirror on it.
Oh yeah.
And you try to look at those fingers and see who it was playing without seeing.
You can always tell Gary.
Yeah, Gary Primer had those.
Would you like to see that piano?
No, that was great times though. I mean, that was neat.
Yeah, but
Why did
I have that piano? Just so happens that I have that.
Are
you do not even?
I have that piano in my living room.
Are you serious?
Or one like it. You're talking about one
No,
like
the very piano that was used for gospel.
with a mirror on it.
With a mirror on it. The
That
mirror
is
was
awesome,
okay.
Kevin. That is awesome.
What happened? Let me tell you just the quick story.
I
Was,
remember the brand. What was it?
It's a Baldwin.
Okay, yeah.
I went to church one Sunday morning. The gentleman that I go to church with is a photojournalist at Channel 2, which Channel 8 became Channel 2.
You're kidding me. This is true.
This is true, the true story. And he said, "Do you know anybody who wants to buy a Baldwin piano?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I'll come and look at it." So I went down to the station, found out it's the piano that they used to do Gospel Jubilee.
Wow.
It was sitting in a corner collecting dust, and they were going to auction it off to a sealed bid auction, employees only.
Are you
Oh my goodness.
So I called Baldwin. I got the serial number, called Baldwin, found out the year of manufacture, that it was a one-owner piano and low mileage.
Low mileage.
So high mileage, actually. So I bid $1,200 for this piano.
You are kidding me.
And got it.
No
And
way.
Since then, I've put quite a bit of money in it to preserve it.
Wow.
But we replaced the mirror
But it is
on the
priceless.
fall-down
It's
board.
priceless, though.
There's no telling who else played that piano. But
That's exactly right.
it is in my living room today. Anybody that wants to
I'm
come
going to touch
and play
him.
it can come.
That
and
is
play.
awesome. That is awesome.
And you can't play a lick.
I don't play the piano.
But Bev does, doesn't she?
Her mom does.
Oh, her mom does.
Plays it great.
Boy, that is
awesome.
that's
story.
historic memorabilia right there. Now, let me tell you.
Almost like Ronnie.
Yep.
You were talking about buses. Jonathan was bringing attention about the boys one time. Their bus actually got the windshield got busted out of it, and so for them to get the windshield fixed back then, they had to go somewhere to get it repaired. So they found an old motorcycle helmet, and the front windshield was busted out of the front of the bus. So here's Reagan sitting behind the wheel with a helmet on and a windshield over his face, and that wind blowing through the bus. Of course, they had all the wind of that wind just going through, and the curtains hanging outside the bus, and everything. And said people just driving by looking at it. And there's Reagan with a big old helmet on, driving the bus down the road.
Yeah, goggles on.
My goodness. Well, he had like a shield over his motorcycle helmet, but a lot of crazy things like that happen. Oh,
Speaking of that, you and I know a lot of fairly well-to-do people. You're supposed to turn your cell phone off.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, who is it? Maybe we might want to catch this on video.
Hello?
Who it is.
You don't say. You don't say. You don't say.
Who was it?
He didn't say.
You remember the time we were singing with the Hopper Brothers and Connie in a little high school auditorium, and I think "Shoutin' Happy" was their feature song.
Yeah.
Well, they were into that song, the last song of their segment. I mean, they had the crowd going, and
This is in the gym, right?
in the gym.
Yeah, okay.
And we were in the wings. We were getting ready to come on, or
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. And Hamill, you know how he is. He just liked to dare me with some stuff. I'm just that kind of guy, I guess.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, Phillips," he said, "you see those ropes?" And of course, in a high school, you've got those ropes that athletes climb up to the ceiling and come back down on. And he said, "I dare you to swing out there in front of them while they're singing, that song." I said, "My goodness, will that rope go?" "Yeah, I think it will." So they lifted me up a couple of the guys lifted me up on that rope and got the bottom of it and pulled it all the way to the end of the auditorium.
Yeah.
And then let her rip. I swung out there in front. It was beautiful. I mean, it landed right in front of Connie. And I just waved at her, see what happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I went back behind the curtain. I don't remember if they finished the song or not.
Well, I did their best, too, I think.
That was one of the funniest times. And Hamill, of course, he just rolled. He'd
Talk
love to get the groups.
Talk about big guys that were pretty quick,
Yeah.
Big Lou with the Prophets that way,
Yeah.
And we'd sung for W.B. Dallin down in Fort Worth, and that's the November sing he had every year, where you filled 3 buildings. And the last one was the theater in the round. And everybody had on the aisles, they had a ramp that went up to the stage with a pad to keep you walking up and had a little ridge in it, And Ben Spear can tell you about it because he was sitting right there laughing at me. And we just, all of them went in one aisle. And we said, well, we're going to be different prophets. We're going in 3 aisles. I mean, 5 aisles. There was 5 of them. And we said, okay, so we all picked our aisle. And we started down they introduced us, and here we come. And I'm actually the pro. We had black suits on, and I tripped on one of them red rings on that pad.
No.
And I was in the air, and Big Lou looked over and seen me flying. And when I come up on my hands and knees, and there was a mic stand right in front of me. And Big Lou comes over and says, "Safe!"
Always good. And I got a hold of a megaphone one time, and we were. It was an industrial megaphone.
Yeah, it's a friend of ours up there owned a big concrete company, and he'd stand up there, you know, when they was having the big pours, he called it.
Yeah.
And he gave Jonathan his megaphone. Well, we was at a concert and getting ready to set up, and they was having what's that stuff they sell? You know, they have these big meetings and all that.
Amway, yeah.
Having a big Amway thing, and people was coming in, and Jonathan had that megaphone making these obscene sounds.
I did not.
Out the window, and I'll tell you, and then people were looking like one another, like, who done it? Him and Doug was he was wheezing.
I had Doug. He was an asthmatic. And we almost had to take him to the doctor.
I'm telling you. But he could just absolutely.
But the best one I ever got with it was at Carowinds Theme Park in North Carolina.
Ivan.
No, it was Reuben. Reuben Bean.
Oh, I thought.
That was the same. Amway was Ivan. That was when I paged
Ivan
Ivan with
there
it.
too?
Well, I paged Ivan with it, and he turned his boy and made him go check it out. but Reuben, we were backstage, and I had that thing, Reuben Bean with the McCameys, and Reuben's very serious, and he's walking to the bus, and I'm sitting back there watching. I'm going, oh, where's my megaphone? And man, I slide that open where you can't see it, and I went, and I mean, it's a long. Y'all have all been there.
Oh, yeah.
It's a long way back up to the ticket booth,
yeah.
and I went. Reuben Bean of the McCameys, please come to the ticket office. Reuben Bean. he had this look come across. He went, he turned around.
Did Reuben ever know you did that?
No, he never did. Reuben, I would like to say I'm sorry.
But it was fun at the time.
But it was funny at the time. But Ivan, we were in that big building, and he was eating in the green room, and I said, what's his son's name?
Ryan.
Ryan was traveling with him, and I went, Ivan Parker, please come to the ticket office. Ivan Parker. Well, it was a big arena. I mean, you had to walk away up there, and I was sitting there, and I saw him. He went. He told his boy, he made Ryan go check it out, man.
That's funny.
That megaphone brought us a lot of fun.
Brought Jonathan a whole lot of fun. I got word time or two about it.
To close out this segment, I wasn't there. I went to the viewing for Doug when he passed away. But they told me that you did something at the very end of the funeral that Doug had requested you to do about a song.
Oh, gosh. Well, this is just typical Doug Riley. There's a entertainer in country music named Darryl Worley.
Yes.
And Doug and I had sat on the bus just 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks earlier and listened to this CD. I mean, we'd get on the bus on Wednesday nights and we'd all hash and rehash what happened that week, if we had a good week or had a bad week. And Doug said, man, listen to this. And I said, have you listened to the last song? And he said, no, I have not listened to the last song. And I started playing it, and I got finished playing it. He went, man, if something happens to me, he said, Jonathan, you be sure they play this at my funeral.
Wow.
And Doug, just being the old
2
country
weeks
boy.
before
Yeah.
the accident.
And buddy, the name of the song is Everybody Whistle Dixie.
Yeah.
When they lay this body down. And so at the last, I just got up there and, Doug's famous saying was, if everybody was too intense, he said, everybody needs to get serious now, come on. And so we played that song, and Doug, he helped me learn. Laughter, like the Bible says, does good like a medicine. Mm-hmm. And I believe that. And sometimes I get too much, an overdose, you might say.
I do too. Yeah, I do too.
I love it.
But just to know that Doug's heart and the way he left this world, and for him to tell you that 2 weeks beforehand, and everybody that was at the funeral said that was just wow. It was so Doug.
He got him, took his tie off to start with.
Yes. Yeah, Doug didn't like a tie. And Doug had a lot to do with me standing on my head at National Quartet Convention.
While the stage was going around.
Well, that was all about a guy who came up and he said, man, I'll give you $100 if tonight during Gold City's stand, if you'll stand on your head.
For real? I
For
thought
real.
he was joking.
No, this is true. True story. And I walked down, I said, hold on 1 minute. I went there and I went, Tim, there's this guy that wants me to stand on my head here at Quartet Convention. And and Tim went, no, and you're not doing that. I went, okay. So I went back there and I went, hey, man, Tim said I can't do it. He went, tell him I'll give you $200. I went back down there and I went, Tim, I'll give you $100 if you'll let me stand on my head. So Tim went, okay, you got it. So
how did you work that into the set?
Well, I just said, he said, I'll handle it. So we just do our set like normal. And finally Tim went, y'all, I'm gonna do something I wouldn't generally do.
$100.
But I'm gonna, Jonathan, go ahead. So Doug does a drum roll. Well, I take my jacket off, and the funniest thing, if you ever see the picture, you can find the picture on YouTube. And I handed Mark Trammell my coat.
Oh, Mark was
And
dying.
Mark is standing there looking like a mule looking at a new gate. He's like going. And I stood right up on my head, did my legs apart. I could do it right now if I wanted to. And
you just don't want to.
But so we get back and to the table, and the guy, he brought me my $200 and
Did you give Tim his
gave
100?
Tim his 100, but he gave that to my wife. So
Oh,
I can't say
right.
I remember some of the fondest memories we had on the road of all the groups. And of course, we worked with many of them, the Hensons did. But one of the funniest guys, I mean, he was legitimately funny. It wasn't an act to Wendy Bagwell. He lived it. Can you imagine? His precious wife had to roll over and look at him in bed and start laughing, because he was so funny 24 hours a day. And I remember the days of the Rattlesnakes, man, when his group, him and the girls were just as hot as could be in popularity with the Rattlesnakes, drawing big crowds. I mean, going outside the Southern Gospel market into the secular markets, and people that would never come to gospel music concerts were coming to hear the Rattlesnakes. And we were in Bonifay, Florida, and the old gospel man, J.G. Whitfield, was promoting the singing, and he would post a list of the lineup on the side of a pole next to the stage, and big football stadium outdoor, literally from sundown to sunup. I mean, they literally carried that tradition. And so I remember he had the lineup set, and a lot of groups would come and they would look at that lineup and say, hey, I'm not on until this certain time. I've got an opportunity to go to the hamburger joint down the street and get a hamburger, or go to the restaurant in the next little town or something, and be back in time to sing. So the lineup's set in stone, they think. So here comes Wendy, and he sees where he's going to be on after 9 o'clock, and he knows he's popular. So he comes to Mr. Whitt, and he says, Mr. Whitt, he said, besides the fact that this crowd came to hear me, he said, he said, me and the girls got to get on that bus, and we got to be in Oklahoma City tomorrow night. And he said, it's a long ways from Bonifay, Florida. And he said, so really, we're not going to go on until we're not going to go on at 9 o'clock. We want to be put on early in prime time. And Mr. Whitt said, I can't do that. He said, it really mess up everything. He said, some of these groups wouldn't even be back in time, He said, well, I can't help it. He said that we got a long ways to go. And he said, that's the way it's got to be. So finally he finagled around and talked JG into putting him on at 8. And so, man, I'd love to agitate Whit, and I'd get right up next to him and I'd say, got the best of you, didn't he? Got the best of you. He had his way. He's really the one in charge here, isn't he? And just agitate him, and he's trying to fluff me off, and listen to Wendy, and that crowd's going crazy, man. And all of a sudden he starts stomping his feet like I mean, he scared me for a little bit. He just got so irate, and I said, well, what's wrong with it? He said, that guy, he said, he's up there singing, he said, and he just flat outright lied to me. He said, he's with me tomorrow night, 100 miles down the road.
We used to travel, especially myself, Fox, and Hamill, and usually the other singer of the group, whoever it might have been at that time, we were always avid golfers. And we'd travel all night just to get to be able to tee off at 8 o'clock in the morning, get to a golf course. And we had all these golf courses. You know, we had them, well, see, we're going to be in Tupelo, Mississippi now. Remember that country club out there? Or wherever we were going. And, but always, well, this was on. And Eldridge Fox was, he had a tendency to back up after he hit his shot. You know, he'd hit his shot and then he'd back up and hold the club bar and he'd be looking at it. And it was down in Chattanooga one day, he had just barely got his ball over this creek. I mean, it was like, if the camera can pick it up here, here's the creek and here's where his ball was. And he just barely had room to stand. And of course he didn't realize or didn't think no more about where he was at. Had on white pants that day. White pants, tan shirt, you know what I'm saying. And he took a swing at that ball and he just stepped right back and there he went. Into the middle of that creek he went.
Wow.
Middle of that creek.
The recent commercials that I like is Messing with Sasquatch. Y'all seen those?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Well, mine is Messing with my son because we've only been singing now as Wilbur and Wilburn for 10 months, but I learned a lot from the quartets about how to mess with these young green singers. And we don't have a bus yet, so we're getting dressed a lot in Sunday school rooms and dressing rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one particular evening, not too long ago, I got back there. Jordan, he takes care of the sound. He's setting up the sound. And I got back there in our little dressing room or our Sunday school room where we were getting ready this particular night. And I took all his dress clothes and I tied his pants together as tight as I could tie them, his breeches legs, and I took his sleeves of his shirt. And I tied these things in knots. And I already made it up. I knew the pastor really well. He didn't know how well I did know the pastor. And so I kind of disappeared. And Jordan was in there setting up, and he was nonchalantly going back to get a drink of water and get ready for the evening. And the pastor went to Jordan. He went, "You do know we start in 5 minutes, don't you, son?" And man, shoom, he took off back there to that Sunday school room. And all I hear is boom, boom, and things knocking around in there. And when he comes out, I'm just sitting there with a bottle of water. And Jordan, he went, "Dad, did you tie all my breeches legs together?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I've just about killed myself trying to get ready." So that's my recent story.
That's awesome.
Messing with Jordan.
Being with Gordon today, Gordon, you're great.
Oh,
I really
you're
do
wonderful.
appreciate you. Everything that you do. But you know, Gordon, with his, I don't call Gordon having a disability. He don't let him slow down. It don't slow him down on nothing. He can still do everything probably better than anybody else. But I've worked with a promoter up in Tennessee many times, Mr. J. Baswell Mull up there. And Ronnie Henson, if anybody knows Ronnie, he is a prankster. And he loves to pull a prank. We was up in Knoxville, and Ronnie was going to carry Jay Baswell out to welcome the people and get the singing started and everything. Well, instead of facing him toward the audience, he faces him over against the side wall. And Jay Baswell is talking to the wall over here, and the people sitting up there watching.
Wow.
And everybody goes around shaming Roddy all night, which, you know, Roddy and his look had tried to still be funny, but I have laughed about that so many times. But Jay Baswell was a good sport, just like Gordon is. But we've had a lot of funny things happen over the years.
Mm-hmm. And I bet I drive a bus better than Kelly.
Well, it was talking about the chuck wagon gang a while ago. When we used to go out to the program where we would imitate the Spear family and the Blackwood brothers and the Statesmen and all the different groups. And a lot of times, here again, we were the bunch of young guys, the Oaks back then, and we were And we were singing. This would go out to the program thing. And Sister Rose, the soprano singer,
I hope your horse dies.
anyway, Sister Rose would come out and sing higher with us. Higher, we climbed, and finally she quit doing it after a while. And Willie thought, well, we must have ticked her off or something. So we went to her. 2 or 3 of us went to Sister Rose and said, why don't you ever come out and sing with us on that? And she said, I can't, because I can't sing it as high as Willie is singing it. The soprano of the Chugwagon gang couldn't sing it as high as Willie
She was
could.
making a living, I wasn't.
Well, she was on pitch too.
One real short one. You remember in the days when quartets would gang up, you'd do your last song and another group, 2 or 3 of the members come out and join you. And we were on, I think, old-fashioned meeting, I guess was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And Willie was out in the vestibule manning the record table so he would have enough money to eat after the program. And so he heard us, and so he came running. He ran out the front door, and around the side of the building, and ran into a fence. And he just tried to leap over that fence, and the fence wires caught him and ripped his pants from his waist all the way down to his ankle. And he stood there with that naked leg showing to the audience.
The show must go on.
Well, we were raised on banjo music, me and old Tarbert here, and the funniest banjo story ever. A banjo player, the biggest part about it is the tone, the way you play. Right. And the best banjo you buy is a Gibson Master Tone. First time I was with the Lewis family at Benson recording, just talking about River Song, that's who they was with. This guy the engineer at the studio had only done Sandy Patty and orchestration. He had never had a banjo in his studio. So little Roy's in there trying to get a sound check. Wow. And it's just like ting, 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 ting. He's got his headphones on. Ting, ting, ting. That ain't it. That ain't it. That ain't it. And it was real thin. That ain't it. That ain't it. And finally the engineer got so frustrated, he said, well, Mr. Lewis, what do you want it to sound like? And so that's what little Roy was waiting on. He flopped them headphones out, went and got in the control room where the engineer was and played Foggy Mountain Breakdown right in his ear. That's what I want it to sound like right there. That's great.
I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about his groaning, all his precious